Chapter 547. White Zetsu, who was spying in the dark, raised his mouth and shook his head disdainfully. Although Dustless didn't guess how he escaped from Impel Down, it was expected that he could escape from this deep-sea cage. You can leave Impel Down without anyone knowing. This is just your wishful thinking. Looking lightly at Beckman, who was concentrating on unlocking, White Zetsu's tone was full of frivolity. Everything that Beckman said to his clone just now was also passed into the ears of his main body. It's not that White Zetsu looks down on Beckman, but he thinks that this guy's idea is too ridiculous. A few months ago, his body had been touched by Dustless. This kid may not be aware of it now. He also has the strength to detect what Dustless did. Taking a deep look at Beckman, White Zetsu's main body also escaped to the surface and disappeared forever. Early the next morning, Wu Chen, who was far away in Mariehua, also got up from Hancock's delicate body. The data of the body, which was enough to ride side by side with 10 tails, was far beyond ordinary people's imagination. Hancock was lying quietly on the bed, half dead and in a coma. Her breath was weak and her face was pale. Looking carefully at Hancock's delicate face, his cold eyes also showed some rare softness. Dustless quietly got out of bed and tidied up his clothes without disturbing her. Usually, Hancock is responsible for this. Dustless is not a hard-hearted person. As long as she is loyal, he doesn't mind being honest with her. After a simple wash, he found some snacks to fill his stomach and sat in the living room as usual to read the morning newspaper of the next day. It has been nearly a year since he came to this world, and reading newspapers every day has become a habit unconsciously. What caught his eye was the banner, which was the competition between Akagami and Hawkeye. This is interesting. Sure enough, a pirate is a pirate. Although Red Hair Shanks is a different kind of pirate, the nature of a pirate is deeply rooted. Carefully reading the words in the newspaper, Dustless sneered. From the beginning to the end, Dustless didn't think that Red Hair Shanks was a good person. Humans were all selfish. Although he appeared to be very cheerful, it didn't mean that he didn't have ambition. This was especially true when Hawkeye and Shanks went their separate ways. The relationship between the two was already broken, and they even started a life and death battle. Hawkeye's red hair was completely negated, so it was normal for him to use any tricks. Because from now on, it meant that the two of them would be on opposite sides. The red-haired man realized that Hawkeye had completely fallen into the devil's path, and it was not impossible for him to eliminate the root of the problem. Master Dustless. A voice rang out without any warning. White Zetsu broke out of the ground like a ghost. Ignoring White Zetsu's voice, Dustless carefully read the newspaper in his hand. Sometimes he frowned, and sometimes his eyes flashed. White Zetsu didn't appear. Seeing this, White Zetsu was speechless. He opened his mouth, but the words that were on the tip of his tongue were taken back. After thinking about it, it was a completely trivial matter. There was no need to be so anxious. It was just a Ben Beckman with a high IQ. There was no need to care so much. His boss, Red Hair Shanks, was just a clown, nothing more. About half an hour later, Dustless put down the newspaper in his hand and leaned on the soft sofa. His thumb rhythmically tapped on the crystal-clear stone table. That kid should have escaped, right? With a calm face, Dustless asked. He couldn't expect a big pirate like Beckman to walk into a trap. White Zetsu nodded slightly, recalling Beckman's strange, but admirable escape plan. He told Dustless the whole story. Short-sighted, smart-ass. After listening to White Zetsu's words, Dustless sneered. These contents were contributed by White Zetsu's body that was killed, so everything Beckman said fell into Dustless's ears. Are you going to blossom on both sides? According to Dustless's personal speculation, the reason why he chose Impel Down is estimated to take advantage of the battle between Red Hair Shanks and Hawkeye to make trouble and attract the attention of Marines. Red Hair and Hawkeye have a life and death battle on the island. The outer islands have many Marines deployed in ambush. As a 7 warlords of the sea, Hawkeye will certainly not be caught. Naturally, Red Hair Shanks went there. Indeed, It is estimated that Beckman's idea is to release the criminals and impel down to attract the attention of Marines and reduce the pressure on Red Hair Shanks. White Zetsu rationally analyzed. After the sword fight with Hawkeye, taking advantage of the siege of Red Hair pirates is likely to destroy them. Beckman will take advantage of the situation to set fire to impel down, which will certainly attract the attention of Marines. After all, there are some ferocious pirates in Impel Down, and the degree of cruelty is far more than Shanks. The Marines naturally know which one is more important. At that time, the ambushing Marines may stop the siege on Shanks and reinforce Impel Down. After all, Red Hair Shanks will not be an ordinary civilian. The cold storage butcher of Impel Down will do anything. In their eyes, life is equivalent to grass. I didn't see it before. It turned out that Red Hair was despicable beyond imagination. With a strange face, Dustless's view of Red Hair changed and then sighed. Everyone had two sides, positive and negative. Once his dark side was released, the destructive power it would cause would be far greater than his sunny side. Increasing the pressure might cause him to reveal his dark nature. But it's good that that guy can escape, I don't have to release him myself. Dustless sneered and his tone was cold. If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. This ridiculous principle of bullshit is extremely pedantic. Only by using strong and powerful fists to deter the enemy and leave an indelible shadow in the other party's heart can Red Hair Shanks be afraid. Chapter 548. Staring at Dustless's handsome face, White Zetsu was depressed. Dustless's calm appearance was beyond his imagination. He is also the deputy captain of Yonko, 4 emperors. Dustless's calm eyes seem to say that he is just a passerby. There is no need to worry about it. He underestimates Sengoku too much. Waving his hand, Dustless was too lazy to waste his breath. Since the last time Impel Down was breached by Doflamingo and Hawkeye, the danger and defense have greatly increased. Beckman can escape from prison himself, indicating that he is indeed clever, but he may not be able to help others. What's more, his eyes flashed with dark blue blood, and the temperature of the entire space fell into an ice cellar. Wuchen spat out a frosty breath. The script I gave him has been completed. Beckman, the clown, can only follow the plot I planned for him. He doesn't have the power to do things beyond my expectations. At this point, Dustless's body had floated countless photons, all of which overflowed through the gaps outside the window. With a harsh roar, the void stretched into a straight beam of light, and Dustless's body disappeared. The direction is Impel Down. Hey! Let us out quickly. How did you get out, you bastard? We are all pirates, grasshoppers on the same rope, we share blessings and misfortunes. I used to admire you, the deputy captain of the Akagami pirates, Ben Beckman. Let me out and I will be your younger brother. The noisy and surprised roar resounded through the usually quiet eternal hell. Pairs of stunned eyes looked at Beckman, who was walking indifferently in the darkness, followed by a loud cry for help. As pirates, everyone should always support and help each other. Now that they are in the same wolf's den, they should abandon their old grievances and work together. It's hard for a clown to make a climate. The contempt in his eyes was fleeting, and Beckman didn't care. But even so, he still threw out the prison key that he stole. If he wanted to escape unscathed, he would need to borrow the strength of this group of thieves. Beckman couldn't do it alone. Hurriedly picking up the keys from the ground, the pirates couldn't wait to remove the shackles on their hands. Clearing his throat, Ben Beckman was about to speak freely about his escape plan, but the next change made the corner of his mouth twitch fiercely, and his old face gradually showed signs of darkening. I've always disliked you. Now, the time to kill you has finally come. God has eyes. Same here, same here. I've been pissed at you for a long time. Even if I die, I'll drag you down to hell as a sacrifice for my crew members who died decades ago. Beckman was caught off guard by this sudden turn of events. This was the opposite of his expected plan. His head was full of black lines, and thousands of words surged from the bottom of his heart. He moved his lips, wanting to teach this group of people a lesson, but he still found it difficult to speak. Most of them had blood-red eyes, and the murderous intent they emitted was bone-chilling and despairing. It was obvious that they were serious. Their determination to not rest until one of them was dead and to destroy both jade and common stone made Beckman's expression change. "Go to hell for me." Suddenly there was a turbulent wave of air behind him. Beckman noticed that the hatred of hatred was locked on him. His face flashed with anger, and he turned away without hesitation. Boom, 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 the place where he stood before was filled with dust and smoke, and there was a large pit on the solid ground. The force was extremely powerful and could easily smash normal humans into meat paste. "You!" Beckman glared at him, the anger in his eyes clearly visible. Just as Beckman was about to scold him for being heartless, he suddenly realized that this old face was unusually familiar. It was the prisoner locked up next to him, an old foe. When he was wandering in the sea with Akagami, Red Hair, he also annihilated the pirate group in front of him. It was a long time ago. Beckman's face was extremely ugly, and he suddenly understood what Marine was trying to do. He should have deliberately arranged this. Marine's Fleet Admiral Sengoku is really not a fish in the pond. This move is vicious enough. Beckman's cold eyes spread and looked at the people around him. Beckman knew more about the ruthlessness of the Fleet Admiral. These people who were arranged in the same cell, or the next cell, before they were locked and impelled down, they were all enemies of water and fire. There was a saying that when enemies met, their eyes would turn red. It was better for them to stay put. If they really broke out of prison one day, it would be very difficult for these enemies to work together. It might even evolve into a scene like this where they killed each other. Beckman suddenly felt that his previous ideas were ridiculous. Not to mention others, even he had unknowingly stepped into the hatred karma set by Sengoku. Everyone, the grievances of the past are insignificant. The most important thing now is to escape. The powerful voice blended with the observation haki sunset in everyone's ears, but the effect was minimal. The pirates who were fighting still stared at each other with scarlet eyes. Most people take Beckman's words as words in their ears. The hatred accumulated over time can't be collected. Some enemies also have the idea of breaking the jar and just want to kill the enemy. After all, the people in Eternal Hell are old pirates who are more than 50 years old. They have been imprisoned and impelled down for many years. Time has worn down their ambitions. If they can kill the enemy who killed their companions in the past, their life will be worth it. A group of ordinary people with no vision, no wonder they were imprisoned and impelled down. The disappointment in his eyes was restrained. Beckman's momentum was awe-inspiring. His cold eyes stared at the former enemy and he planned to quickly kill them and escape. He thought that he could use this group of like-minded people to scourge the Marine and attract the attention of the world. Now it seems that it is nothing more than a dream. Instead of attracting the attention of the Marine, he may be pulled into the hatred vortex carefully planned by Sengoku and be swallowed up. Chapter 549. Even if he was unwilling, Beckman could only endure. He had calculated everything, but he had miscalculated human nature. This group of pirates had endured for decades, and it was not something he could guess at will. In other words, he indirectly underestimated Fleet Admiral Sengoku and underestimated the Buddhist Sengoku known as the Wise Admiral. In the deepest part of Impel Down, the abnormality of the sixth layer, Eternal Hell, quickly attracted the attention of the jailers. A large number of strong people continued to gather here, and a large number of ambushing masters arrived in time. However, the scene in front of them made the group of jailers dumbfounded. Countless veteran pirates were killing each other, blood flowed like a river, the broken limbs were clearly visible, and the smell of blood was like purgatory on earth. The group of jailers became spectators and were tragically ignored. Bastard! Aware that a large number of jailers were constantly coming, Beckman's calm heart splashed with ripples and flames. The previous escape method could be used once. If he was caught again, he would not be able to escape. Secretly peeping at the changes around him, Beckman's forehead was sweating uncontrollably, and his heart was heavy like a mountain. The jailers around him poured in intermittently and continued to come from all directions. If he did not escape in time, once the iron walls surrounded him, it would be no different from a fool's dream to escape. His brain was working at a speed 10 times faster than usual. After a while, a faint smile appeared on his face. Without thinking, Beckman abandoned his opponent and jumped into the chaotic battle. Fishing in troubled water and completely stirring up the muddy water can turn the impossible into possible. At the same time, a special person also came to impel down. The destination was the 6th layer of impel down, eternal hell. The visitor was young and dressed quite casually. His indifferent eyes looked at the ruins around him. The prison was empty and there were no jailers. It seems that they are all in the eternal hell. Aware of the slight vibration under his feet, Dustless looked straight at the abyss below, where there were hysterical shouts from time to time, including violent and shocking power fluctuations. The deep-sea prison was faintly beating, and the scene was very shocking. Then the body ignored the existence of gravity and floated up easily and fell like a stone into the sea. This dark and boundless tunnel is a shortcut to the 6th layer, eternal hell. Boom boom boom, unlike before, the battle in the eternal hell had undergone drastic changes. Due to Beckman's participation, he had deliberately expanded the scale and scope of the battle, implicating the prison guards. The entire 6th floor of the infinite hell turned into a meat grinder for a moment. The dark ground was covered in the eerie glow of blood, which was full of omens and misfortune. The description of a river of blood was too shallow. Good chance. Suddenly discovering that there was a gap in the staircase above the crowd, Beckman made a prompt decision and easily tore the prison guard in front of him to shreds, then immediately rushed forward. Just as he was about to step onto the stairs leading to the higher level of the prison, an indifferent voice suddenly came from behind him. I heard that you've predicted everything. However, I'm very interested in one thing. Was my appearance within your predictions? There was a hint of curiosity in the voice, and a cold chill enveloped him. Beckman's expression changed drastically, and the owner of the voice appeared in his mind. In the blink of an eye, an ominous glint appeared in his eyes. Just as he was about to turn around and attack, a dazzling light flashed, causing him to close his eyes subconsciously. Lightspeed kick. Boom boom boom. Beckman was instantly covered in a gorgeous golden flash, and the heavy blows that could instantly disintegrate a small mountain all landed on his body. Beckman, who was originally on the 6th floor of the infinite hell, jumped up, and his body was easily kicked to the 4th floor through the tunnel Dustless fell from. Whoosh! At this moment, a long and narrow slash whizzed over. The blood-colored light was extremely evil. Before the slash came into contact, one could feel the evil aura rushing straight to one's mind, affecting one's mind and the 4 people. The target that it wanted to devour was none other than Dustless. What's your reason for challenging me? Stopping his plan to pursue Beckman, Dustless put his hands in his pockets, sized up the tall figure in the darkness, and said indifferently. Following Dustless's line of sight, one could see a cold and desolate figure with pure killing intent. He was wearing the official uniform of the Impel Down, holding an evil odachi in his hand, a thick cigar in his mouth, and wearing an unruly expression. It was Shilyu of the Rain. Buzz buzz buzz, the roar full of disaster suddenly sounded, and the crisp sound with the endless smell of blood blended into the air. The air that breathed into the ears and nose was filled with blood, and the stench was nauseating. The trembling artifact that emitted a monstrous killing intent was the odachi in the hand of Shilyu of the Rain, the 2nd generation of the Ghost Blade. As you can see, it led me to find you. You should be a very powerful opponent if you can make it feel afraid. Shilyu raised the ancient sword in his hand and looked at Dustless with fanatical eyes. Shilyu of the Rain was full of havoc. The indifferent gaze did not look at Shilyu. Dustless did not speak, and his body disappeared in an instant. Boom. The wall in the distance burst open, and a large deep pit appeared. Looking at it, it was Shilyu of the Rain who was trapped in it. He couldn't stop staring at Dustless. He didn't expect him to make a sneak attack. He couldn't wait to tear Dustless into pieces. Obviously, he didn't expect him to suddenly attack. I want to fight with you like a swordsman, instead of competing with fists and feet. Holding back his anger, Shilyu of the Rain's eyes were scarlet and cold. Hearing this, Dustless just sneered. His cold eyes looked at him from a superior angle, and his cold voice rang through the dark space where he couldn't see his fingers. In one sentence, Shilyu of the Rain, who was already angry, was completely ignited. The existence of the person who deserves me to draw my sword, one thing is for sure, it is definitely not you. You want me to draw my sword and fight with you? This is just your self-deceiving idea. Do you think you are qualified? Chapter 550. His eyes were locked on Dustless. Shilyu of the Rain was a bloodthirsty person. It was originally because of the arbitrary execution of prisoners that he was sublimated from the original guard to a prisoner. Clang! Without hesitation, he pulled out of the scabbard. The sharp blade was exposed in the dark space. The low temperature was even more indifferent, and the existence of ice residue could be faintly caught in the air flowing around. Whoosh! With the second-generation ghost blade all out of the scabbard, Shilyu of the Rain's temperament changed greatly. His body exuded a strange purple demon aura, extremely evil. The rich purple light was almost substantial, as if it was the source of evil. A little contamination will make you lose yourself. The only difference is that compared with the existence of the first-generation ghost blade that Dustless put in the gate of Babylon, the density of the demon aura is not even the same as the first-generation ghost blade. With this murderous look, it is not difficult to see that Dustless has completely ignited the hidden flame in Shilyu of the Rain's heart. Witnessing Shilyu of the Rain's hostility, Dustless was unmoved. He seemed to remember the past, his brow wrinkled slightly, and he turned a deaf ear to Shilyu of the Rain's fierceness. You should have read the letter. What is the reply? When Hawkeye and Doflamingo invaded Impel Down, the two of them carried Dustless's envelope and handed it to Shilyu of the Rain on the 6th floor of Impel Down. Hearing this, Shilyu of the Rain's invincible momentum suddenly stagnated, and he suddenly realized that there was still such a thing, and the purple demon aura coat was also quickly converged. Clang! The second-generation ghost blade that forced out of the scabbard was put back into the scabbard, and the scarlet killing intent in his eyes was replaced by a color of doubt. Shilyu of the Rain had an incredible expression on his face. He was deeply skeptical of the contents of Dustless's envelope. A person who lives in the current society and you talk about the world 10 years later, everyone feels that he is abnormal. After pondering for a long time, Shilyu of the Rain's eyes showed hesitation. The contents of Dustless's envelope were a fantasy for him. He doesn't seem like the kind of person who likes to play to the gallery. Quietly staring at Dustless, Shilyu of the Rain thought in his heart. Thinking of Dustless's unfathomable strength, his uncertain eyes turned into determination. In this world where the strong are respected, the strongest strength is the only way to go. After hesitating for a moment, Shilyu of the Rain still chose to believe in strength. In this world, only the fist is big can be unscrupulous, and the fist is small can only be beaten passively. The winner is the king and the loser is the bandit. If you can beat me, everything is fine. If not, please do as you please. Shilyu of the Rain said indifferently with a thick cigar in his mouth. Casually throwing away the cigar in his mouth, Shilyu of the Rain savored the thick mellow taste in his mouth. His thick lips opened slightly, and he was about to puff out a smoke ring. Suddenly, a black shadow appeared in front of him and reflected in his pupils. Boom boom boom. The surface of the ground exploded with a bang. Dense cracks extended out like a spider web, swallowing the surrounding ground and splashing up smoke and dust several feet high. In the dust eye, a hazy figure loomed, and it was not difficult to see from the immature outline of the human body that it was by no means Shilyu of the Rain. You bastard! Shilyu of the Rain, whose skin was rough and black, was even more unbearable at the moment. His old face was black, like a black pot that had been used for many years, and it was gloomy like coal. Cough cough cough, Dustless suddenly launched an attack, and the smoke ring that had not yet been spat out also re-entered his abdomen and poured into the depths of his lungs. Shilyu of the Rain coughed violently uncontrollably, his old face was almost green, and his indignation was unbearable. I haven't pulled out my sword yet, and you sneak attack, do you want to be shameless? Do you have the bearing of a swordsman? His sharp eyes stared at Dustless. The cold light that shot out made people shudder. Looking at him, one could feel a burning pain on their skin. You are a despicable and shameless villain who only knows how to use third-rate means, Shilyu of the Rain roared angrily. His lips trembled with anger, and his eyes were bloodshot. Even because of excessive anger, his voice carried a horrifying scream, and the weird sound waves could penetrate into people's souls, and his whole body trembled uncontrollably. Lying powerlessly in the pit, Dustless's sudden attack had caused fatal damage to Shilyu of the Rain, and his heart was extremely aggrieved. He felt like a clown being played by Dustless, and he didn't even have the power to fight back. You don't accept it? Dustless asked indifferently as a foot fell on Shilyu of the Rain's head. Although his face was expressionless, Dustless's contemptuous tone was undisguised, and his eyes, which were as still as a bell, gave Shilyu of the Rain a feeling that no one could shake. He is no exception, and the so-called strongest Whitebeard is no exception. Of course the corner of his mouth twitched fiercely, and Shilyu of the Rain was definitely upset. He was about to satirize Dustless, but the latter was indifferent, and the voice without the slightest emotion suddenly came, making him speechless. As a swordsman, you were defeated with your bare hands. Do you think you are still a qualified swordsman? Shilyu of the Rain heard the words and clenched his teeth. His face was unwilling, and his mouth squirmed intending to refute, but he found that he was speechless. The understatement of the sentence was like a bone in his throat, and his throat was stuck and he could not refute it. From ancient times to the present, the winner is king, and the loser is a bandit. It doesn't matter what the means are. The person who can ride on the head of all creatures is the final victor, and history has always been written by the victors. Secondly, as Dustless said, no matter what the reason, a swordsman was defeated with his bare hands, which is an undeniable fact. And because Dustless had taken advantage of the situation to attack before, Shilyu of the Rain opened his observation haki in advance, and Dustless's every move could not escape his eyes. Even so, the final scene was the same as before, and he was easily defeated with one move. Even if he had made defensive preparations, he could not change the fact. The first time may have been careless, the second time he was relaxed and lazy on the surface, but secretly he was on guard against Dustless. Despite this, he was defeated in the blink of an eye. Chapter 551. As time passed slowly, Shilyu of the Rain's breathing became heavier and heavier. People have dignity and courage, especially the self-esteem and pride of a swordsman. Dustless's foot casually stepped on Shilyu of the Rain's blackened old face, and one could imagine what kind of blow it was to him. The murderous intent in his eyes was as vast and boundless as a torrent, and it was out of control. Buzz buzz buzz, falling to the side, the unsheathed second-generation ghost blade also responded to the humiliation of its master, emitting bursts of sorrow, emitting an evil and deep purple light. Boom boom boom. Driven by humiliation, grief, and indignation, Shilyu of the Rain struggled hard, and his strong and powerful body trembled in resistance. The eruption of hostility went straight to Dustless's head, entering his mind and affecting his reason. A chestnut in the sea is nothing. The negative emotions that were enough to devour and annihilate the whole world burst out, and the external hostility that entered Dustless's mind was instantly suppressed, and it only stirred up a weak ripple before it was cruelly disintegrated. In this world, there was no one who could match Dustless's murderous intent. It seems that my previous thoughts were a bit naive. I thought that defeating your confidence would make you obedient. His eyes narrowed, emitting a dangerous luster, and the foot that stepped on Shilyu of the Rain lifted slightly, and then a large number of photons condensed, and the dark space instantly lit up as bright as day. Maybe letting you sleep quietly for a while is the right decision. Shilyu of the Rain choked when he heard the words, and the shining golden light forced him to close his eyes. Even so, he could still feel the light that was enough to annihilate him. The hostility on his face finally loosened, and he was no longer hostile to Dustless, or it could be said that he had agreed to the conditions in Dustless's envelope. However, it was too late. The sweat on his forehead was evaporated by the blazing light, and the light that swept out from the soles of his feet instantly swallowed him. Boom boom boom, accompanied by a harsh roar, a huge fireball bloomed out of the dark and boundless void, and the center of the battle between Dustless and Shilyu of the Rain was engulfed. Although the strength of the lightspeed kick has been greatly reduced, it's still very dangerous to be hit head-on. Glancing at the charred and unconscious Shilyu of the Rain, Dustless's face was full of indifference as he left. Even if Shilyu of the Rain really kneels down and begs for mercy, he can't be easily let go. This kind of person was born rebellious and held grudges. If he didn't intimidate or oppress him with force, he might stab him in the back at any time. Beckman, that brat, should have escaped, Dustless muttered to himself in the dark corridor. Now, he looked like he was only 17 or 18 years old. In fact, he had lived 3 lives and was over 50 years old. In his eyes, Beckman was no different from a child who hadn't grown up. Impel Down was surrounded by the sea and isolated from the world. There was only one way to escape, and that was to leave by boat. There was no other way. Suddenly there was a slight vibration on the ground. Dustless stopped and his thinking face suddenly raised. It was a group of pirates who had escaped from the prison. Frowning, Dustless looked at the line of sight that had been passed by before. The dense pirates fell in a pool of blood. Now he was on the 3rd floor of Impel Down and he almost killed all the way. He didn't know how many pirates he had killed during this period. One after another, there's no end to it. Ripples suddenly appeared in his calm eyes, and an invisible energy fluctuation broke out of his body. The pirates who were holding their long swords were instantly annihilated. How Shikuhaki is really suitable for cleaning up the miscellaneous soldiers. Dustless smiled and then quietly slipped away and went straight to the exit of Impel Down. This deep-sea prison was a huge process that Marine headquarters and the world government spent decades to build. It would take a while to get out. About half an hour later, Dustless saw the bright morning sun. Looking around and closing his eyes, the majestic perception spread and the area covered almost the entire Impel Down. He thought that Beckman was still in Impel Down, but he didn't expect that he had already escaped. That group of people. It seems that they are ready to meet me. If you want to escape from Impel Down, the only way is to leave by boat. There are battleships all around, and it is impossible to run the ship by one person. Only by preparing in advance. But you can escape, which is also in line with the ending I want to see. The dry and cracked corners of his mouth quietly rose, and Dustless disappeared into the void. Dustless didn't need to meddle in the rioting prisoners in Impel Down. Although it was an eventful period when Sengoku was the fleet admiral, any crisis was handled by him in an orderly manner. As long as these prisoners were still in Impel Down, they were like turtles in a jar. With the disappearance of Dustless, the source of the chaos, everything calmed down, leaving only the constant devastation and the occasional tremor in Impel Down. At the same time, the duel on the other side also came to an end. In terms of pure swordsmanship, perhaps Red Hair is slightly inferior to Hawkeye, but in terms of comprehensive ability, it is obvious that he is slightly better. However, it is impossible to defeat Hawkeye with this. The scene fell into a stalemate. Both of them were panting and did not admit defeat. They stared at each other's every move. It seems that you are determined to follow that man, Hawkeye. Red Hair Shank said in a hoarse voice as he stared at Hawkeye, who refused to give up. His heart hurt like a knife, and his former best friend became an enemy. This huge contrast even made him collapse and despair. The psychological impact was far greater than the physical impact, and the dozens of scars were not as deep as the impact of Hawkeye's betrayal. Thinking of the crew members who shared weal and woe with him, Red Hair Shanks finally persevered. Come at me. Hawkeye wasn't that strong either, so he didn't want to give up. Come at me. Red Hair Shanks heard the words and completely put aside the entanglement of the past. The hesitation in his heart turned into a resolute determination. He was determined to destroy Hawkeye at all costs. If he doesn't kill him now, maybe in the future it will be his crew members who groan under Hawkeye's black knife. Chapter 552. Now Red Hair Shanks is the opposite of his usual gentle self. His eyes are cold and murderous. Even because of his companions, Haki's control and power are on a higher level. At this moment, Red Hair is still bloodthirsty. Is this the other side of your treatment of the enemy, Shanks? Holding the black sword in both hands, Hawkeye didn't forget to tease Shanks. You seem to be a lot stronger than before. At the same time, your wisdom has decreased a lot. Whiz. Hawkeye's eyes lit up as he noticed that the red-haired Shanks was full of flaws. He raised the black blade in his hand and pounced towards the red-haired Shanks. Ripples appeared in the void as the jade-green sword energy crushed towards the red-haired Shanks. The moment it was about to swallow Red Hair, another change occurred. Bang bang bang, a series of muffled gunshots rang out, followed by several pitch-black bullets that pierced through the awe-inspiring radiance. The awe-inspiring radiance was unscathed, but its fierce momentum was weakened by 70%. Boom! The western sword in his hand was gently raised and threw out a cold light. Hawkeye's attack collapsed and turned into a dense rainstorm. When it came into contact with Red Hair, the power had been greatly reduced and was easily dispersed by him. Bullets covered with armament Haki? Hawkeye frowned deeply and said. Just a few fleeting black bullets were difficult to catch with the naked eye. Only observation Haki can capture the speed of the bullets. Hawkeye keenly found that the bullets wrapped with armament Haki were swallowed by his attack, but it also weakened the power of the attack in a disguised way. When it was close to Red Hair, the power was less than 20%. You bastard. Hawkeye's face changed slightly, and his eyes were hoarse. He had already guessed who the instigator behind the scenes was. His sharp eyes expanded and all the movements around him were taken into his eyes. The people who ambushed him were the crew of Red Hair pirates. You want to involve other people in the personal grievances between you and me? The hands holding the black sword trembled, and Hawkeye's mood splashed huge ripples. The dialogue was full of gunpowder. Hawkeye went to the battle alone, but Red Hair secretly ambushed his crew and dared to interrupt the duel between them. How could Hawkeye not be angry? Staring at the red-haired Shanks in front of him, this was the first time in his life that he felt that the red-haired Shanks was so unfamiliar. That good brother of his who drank and chatted merrily with him in the past seemed to be a disguise. I should have said before that I am not a swordsman, but a pirate. The red-haired Shanks smiled calmly. For pirates, despicable or not, no one cares about these details. It's all up to the winner. A trustworthy pirate is not a good pirate. The competition between us is over. The sword in his hand returned to the scabbard. He closed his eyes and recalled the previous battle. Red Hair said, frankly speaking, I'm not as good as you, the world's greatest swordsman, in terms of swordsmanship. But in terms of overall ability, I'm still slightly better. However, all of this is not important now. His eyes suddenly opened, emitting a dark light that was enough to swallow Hawkeye. Red Hair's cold voice resounded through the sky. The duel between you and me ended ahead of time. Now, it's going to be a war between you and the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates. As Red Hair's powerful roar fell, the surrounding environment was filled with sand and stones. Under the reflection of the sand, several hazy figures swept out one after another. The members of the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates who were secretly peeping finally jumped out of the water. The Akagami, Red Hair, pirates all appeared. That bastard is really shameless. He can do such a shameless thing. In the dense jungle, White Zetsu was indignant, but he was not worried. There were many projection Den Mushi beside him, and the other side was connected to Mariewa Dustless. Compared to White Zetsu, Dustless is much happier. Howl. A sharp whistling sound resounded through the sky, and a green light cut through the void, followed by a huge chop that was powerful enough to destroy a mountain swept towards the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates. And Hawkeye has already seen the situation and slipped away. In such a critical moment, Hawkeye naturally won't be stupid enough to fight hard. It's useless to show off his courage. If Akagami, Red Hair, is alone, Hawkeye can fight him, but if the whole Akagami, Red Hair, pirate ship besieges him together, it will be like ants biting an elephant to death. The crew of the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates are the elites of the elites, and there is only one way to go if they fight hard. Dustless, who is far away in Mariewa, is living a free and easy life. The image reflected in the den mushi in front of him is a live broadcast of Hawkeye and Akagami, accompanied by a peerless beauty. On the left is the indifferent Princess Otoheim, and on the right is Hancock, who is responsible for Dustless's daily life. Your subordinates are being chased to the point of no return, yet you still have the leisure to eat fruits? Princess Otoheim disdained to communicate with Dustless, but the scene in front of her made her speechless. She saw Dustless comfortably swallowing the crystal grape sent by Hancock's jade hand. This lazy look is like a god. The number of times you take the initiative to talk to me is very few. Dustless was slightly surprised, but he didn't think that Princess Otoheim would be fascinated by his style and turn over a new leaf. In the past, Princess Otoheim avoided him, and the chances of her taking the initiative to talk to him were zero. We're a family, don't say 2 words. If you have something to say, you're also my possession. Dustless generously promised Princess Otoheim, but his malicious eyes were hard to believe. Hearing this, Princess Otoheim's eyes flashed. She did have something to ask. After knowing each other for a long time, she also understood Dustless's mind. If she followed his words, she would be safe. If she didn't open her eyes, she would have a serious end. Princess Otoheim has a deep understanding of this. These days, she has been obedient to Dustless, and they get along very well. Chapter 553. Princess E.G. was bashful. She wanted to say something but stopped. Wu Chen's smiling expression was extremely hateful in her eyes. The corners of his mouth were raised high. He was no different from an old fox waiting for a rabbit to come to his door. I don't have anything to ask of you. Turning her head, Princess Aji ignored Wu Chen's gaze. Out of sight, out of mind. The more she spoils Dustless, the worse he will become. After a while, Princess Otoheim has a little understanding of him, and after several summaries, she has found an alternative way to make a living. Boring. Seeing that Princess Otoheim didn't answer, Dustless also retracted his gaze and touched his smooth chin. He is only interested in the prey that will resist, and the sheep that are obedient can't arouse the slightest interest, like chicken bones. It's a pity to throw them away. Sure enough, it's the same as what Hancock said. Seeing that Dustless didn't pay attention to her, Princess Otoheim's mouth raised a smile of conspiracy, and at the same time, she didn't know whether to laugh or cry, and suddenly found that the previous fierce resistance was simply self-destruction. She behaved obediently. Over time, Wu Chen's interest in her would gradually fade. It's true that people's hearts can't be seen. Hancock's eyes were always observing the scene in the den mushi, and it was extremely complicated. In her impression, Akagami is the kind of bold pirate who is very heroic and attaches importance to the existence of his companions. The red-haired man in front of her subverted her previous understanding. This may be the situation. Princess Otoheim also slightly nodded, and there was an incredible look in her eyes as she whispered, I have heard that Akagami Shanks is a person who attaches great importance to friendship. As the queen of the Fishman Island, Princess Otoheim is more knowledgeable than Hancock. Akagami Shanks is an anomaly among the pirates. Among the Yonko, for emperors, he is the only one who drifts around without a fixed residence. Whether it is the Whitebeard pirates, the Bigumamu pirates, or the Kaido pirates, the New World has annexed countless islands, only Akagami Shanks is home and roams the world. He is the opposite of those ambitious pirates. Value friendship? Red Hair Shanks is indeed that kind of man. Even if he was slapped in the face, he wouldn't allow others to bully his friends or crew. But that was in the past. Now Hawkeye is on my side, and our positions are different. Hawkeye can hurt his friends at any time, so naturally Red Hair Shanks is eager to kill him. Dustless was quite clear about this. Red Hair Shanks was a person who valued friendship and loyalty, but this rule was only limited to his close friends and companions. Hawkeye, who used to be his best friend, was now his enemy. That was all. To put it bluntly, the red-haired Shanks you respected in the past is just a clown. Dustless added fuel to the fire when he saw Princess Odoheim, and Hancock's eyes were slightly dim. Facts speak louder than words, and there is no need for Dustless to fabricate. What happened in the den mushy in front of him has already explained everything. Treat your friends with respect, but if you are an enemy, you will naturally fight with your sword. Everyone actually has two sides of justice and evil. Red Hair Shanks used to expose his positive and optimistic side, and now it belongs to the other side that few people know. Dustless said bluntly, with a contemptuous attitude towards Red Hair Shanks. It's true that pirates are not good things. After a long silence, Hancock nodded slightly and found that her previous ideas were too naive. She immediately looked at Princess Odoheim and said contemptuously, "Do you think that Whitebeard sheltered your Fishman Island without a purpose?" "Stupid." Dustless sneered, and Whitebeard inexplicably found that he had done too many wrong things in half of his life. Sheltering the Fishman Island? It's tantamount to a fantasy. What is a pirate? The pursuit of profit, this is the true portrayal of a pirate. Burning and looting under the loud slogan of pursuing dreams, this is a pirate. Whitebeard is the most powerful pirate with both wisdom and courage. Sheltering the Fishman Island for no reason is unclear. According to Dustless's guess, there must be some unknown purpose. Impossible, he is very friendly to the Fishman Island. Her pretty face changed greatly, and Princess Odoheim argued. During the time when Whitebeard sheltered the Fishman Island, the foreign pirates were low-key, and the Fishman Island became a peaceful paradise. I only believe that no one gets up early without profit. Glancing at Princess Odoheim, Dustless sighed, the Fishman's idea is always too pure, and dealing with cunning humans will only lead to deceit. In your impression, Red Hair Shanks is very forthright and unrestrained. But now he and his crew besieged Hawkeye. The white beard you see is only the color on the surface. Only God knows what he really is. Speaking of this, Dustless was too lazy to talk nonsense. Everyone has two sides. Before, Red Hair Shanks exposed only the surface character of people, and now this scene is the darkness in his heart. Each of the Yonko, 4 emperors, of the New World is actually a bloody executioner. Whitebeard and Red Hair Shanks are like this. It is because the world is afraid of their strength, and because each of them stepped on a mountain of corpses, which indirectly laid the foundation for their Yonko, 4 emperors, name. That is to say, everyone also has two sides, and you are no exception. Princess Odoheim is obviously much bolder than the slightly obedient Hancock. Dustless smiled and did not deny it, and seriously replied, yes. What about your dark side? Princess Odoheim blinked and asked curiously. Akagami, this kind of person, could give up everything to kill Hawkeye. Once Dustless broke out, she was curious about what unexpected things would happen. God knows, Dustless shrugged, and at the same time, he couldn't help but think about Whitebeard's intentions and purposes for sheltering the Fishman Island. It is certain that his thoughts are not simple. There must be other plans. Chapter 554. A pirate with a high bounty means that their hands are stained with more blood. There is no reason for the strongest butcher like Whitebeard to shelter the Fishman Island for no reason. Impossible, he must be, you are just deceiving yourself. I am afraid that you can't even deceive yourself. Dustless waved his hand and interrupted Princess Odoheim's speech, and said indifferently. There is no profit, this is the truth that will never change. Princess Odoheim's face was blue when she heard this, and she wanted to refute, but she was speechless. After thinking about it, Whitebeard, a big pirate, sheltering the Fishman Island for no reason is indeed somewhat unreasonable and extraordinary. It is extremely difficult to find an excuse that can convince and deceive her. You want to get the protection of the government, but you are sworn brothers with Whitebeard, an enemy. Shaking his head, Dustless sighed that Princess Odoheim's idea was ridiculous and naive. She wanted to join the world government and get protection, but she secretly became sworn brothers with Whitebeard. This way of stepping on two boats is only self-destruction. Whitebeard, although I don't know what you're plotting, but you'd better not have that kind of thought, or else, humph. Wu Chen snorted with a bone-chilling light in his eyes. The dragon has a reverse scale and it will die. The relationship between Roger and Whitebeard is unusual. It is not ruled out that he told Whitebeard the content of the poneglyph, and after witnessing the strength of the world government, Whitebeard also moved other thoughts. He wants to defeat the world government and Marine in an alternative way, or simply to protect his sons. Don't tell me you're saying that her intentions are. Princess Odoheim's face was ugly, and the reason why Dustless valued her was clear for a long time. Hearing this, Dustless nodded silently this time. Although it was only a guess at the moment, there was only one thing on the Fishmen Island that could attract a legendary figure like Whitebeard. I told you before that everyone has two sides. Don't think of Whitebeard as a sheep. The old man is actually a beast that can devour everything. Dustless said seriously. Whitebeard doesn't know some poneglyph, but his best friend, One Piece, Gold, Roger does know many unknown secrets. It was not impossible to tell Whitebeard some important information. There's an 80% chance that they're here for the Sea King. However, I hope that old man knows what's good for him. Dustless's gaze fell on Princess Otoji's body. He gently patted her shoulder and said with a pleasant smile, "There is no need to worry. When I let you go, I left my power in you and your mother. With the birth of Shirahoshi, my power has also been transferred to her. If Whitebeard dares to act rashly, he will be caught in his own trap." I hope so. Princess Aji nodded worriedly. Although it's just Dustless's guess, the only thing that can attract Whitebeard on Fishman Island is the ancient weapon, Sea King. The source of Whitebeard's news is naturally Roger, the Pirate King. Although Whitebeard is a pirate, he is not a brainless man. He knows what's more important. He won't touch the key to open Pandora's ink box unless he has to. He can't afford such a price and consequences. Taking advantage of the situation, he took Princess Aji into his arms. Wu Chen explained while taking advantage of her. Unlike before, Princess Otoji did not resist this time. Her eyes were dotted with pitiful hesitation and helplessness. Instead of refusing Dustless, she grabbed his clothes. It seems that only when her heart is empty and flustered can she calm down. If Whitebeard really wants to rob Shirahoshi, no one on Fishman Island can stop him. The only life-saving straw is Dustless. Don't worry, Whitebeard is not a god. He may only know that the Sea King exists on Fishman Island. He doesn't know who it is. Dustless comforted her softly. The poneglyph only records the location of the ancient weapon. It doesn't detail who it is. Looking at today's world, the people who know that Shirahoshi is the Sea King are definitely not more than 5. The reason why Princess Otoji knew was that Dustless told her impatiently. That man seems to have landed on the island, Master. Hancock said with a smile, and her voice was like the sound of nature, making people addicted. Dustless glanced at her faintly and then nodded slightly. His eyes moved away from Princess Otoji's body and stared at the image reflected in the Den Mushi. What came into view was the embarrassed Beckman. This savior finally appeared. Otherwise, Hawkeye might have been besieged by Akagami, Red Hair, pirates and died. Beckman came to Hawkeye's rescue. This carefully arranged script is good. Dustless's mouth outlined a gloomy smile, and his tone was unusually hoarse. Princess Otoji and Hancock, sitting next to Dustless, looked at each other and could see the looming fear in each other's eyes. The only fortunate thing is that this gloomy taste is not directed at the two of them. Don't tell me you're counting on Beckman to help Hawkeye? Patting her chest, Princess Odoheim tried her best to remain calm and asked curiously. Hancock also tilted her head and looked at Dustless with her smart eyes. Apparently, she was also looking forward to Dustless's answer. It's true. When I saw him a few months ago, I left something special in his body, but because my ability was too strange, Beckman couldn't detect it. Dustless said lightly as if he had done a trivial thing. He quietly tasted the hot tea in his hand, but the evil smile on the corner of his mouth was enough to make people retreat. He looked at Beckman with contempt, the joy reflected in his eyes was clearly visible. Wu Chen's face was full of contempt and disdain. What awaited Beckman was not the joy of reuniting after so many hardships, but the complete fall from heaven to hell. Chapter 555. Crossing the endless sea and experiencing countless twists and turns, what brought the crew under the flag was not the joy after the reunion, but the shadow that could not be waved away. There is nothing more ironic than this. Princess Odoheim looked at Dustless with cold legs and finally understood his intentions. Thinking of Dustless's crazy ideas, her whole body trembled slightly. Killing people is nothing more than a nod of the head, the cruel borrowing of a knife to kill people. Such a practice may lead to the Akagami, red hair, pirates falling apart like a plate of loose sand. Don't show such an incredible expression, this is called retribution. It's all Red Hair Shank's fault, and he has to pay the price for meddling in other people's business. Seeing Princess Odoheim's pupils widening, Dustless said helplessly, his face full of disapproval. He didn't feel that it was too much. It is true that he can crush the conspiracy of the Akagami, red hair, pirates, but the effect is different from that of the vice-captain. The vice-captain, who usually gives trust, suddenly starts to attack his own crew one day, and the effect is absolutely unprecedented. Even if he can't wipe out the Akagami, red hair, pirates, there are very few people who are willing to follow Akagami, red hair, pirates in the future. That kid has taken an inch and taken a mile again and again. Does he think that Yonko, for emperors, can do whatever he wants? If I don't teach him a lesson, he will really think that I am mud. Dustless sneered again and again, and his whole body was covered with deep cold air. The current red hair was quite scheming, but he had not yet reached the level of perfection. At such a young age, he had become one of the 4 emperors, whose name shook the world at the age of 30. It was normal for him to have an arrogant attitude because of his talent. Understanding is understanding. If you want Dustless to agree with it, it is a dream. It is just right to take advantage of the arrest of Beckman this time to defeat the Akagami, red hair, pirates and drive them out of the New World. Isn't it self-destruction to do this? Consort Aji's chest tightened as she nervously asked. She knew that Dustless was very strong, but she didn't think he had the strength to contend with the 4 emperors. Those arrogant pirates were all peerless powerhouses who had experienced hundreds of battles. Every one of the Yonko, 4 emperors, can be called an invincible monster existence. In a duel in a 1-to-1 state, even if an admiral of the marine headquarters goes on the field, the one who will be trampled in the end will definitely be the admiral. For example, Whitebeard is the strongest pirate among the Yonko, 4 emperors. Now in his heyday, he is invincible. His strength is enough to crush all opponents. Even if Red Hair Shanks was not as good as Whitebeard, he believed that he would not be too bad. You're right, it was indeed self-destruction. However, the one who self-destructed was Red Hair Shanks. Dustless's lips curled into a cold arc as he spoke emotionlessly. Sister Aji is worried, young master will definitely win. Hancock grinned and showed a bright smile. She was full of confidence in Dustless. Others may not know, but the defeat of 100 Beast Kaido a few days ago was still vivid in Hancock's mind. Beckman, who had come ashore in a hurry, had a desolate look on his face. His eyes were dim and his face was as pale as snow. Looking at his waist, there were still dark red bloodstains. As time passed, they had slowly coagulated into scars. The piercing pain from all over his body had numbed his nerves. This conspicuous scar was left by Wu Chen. On the surface, it didn't look very fatal, but in fact, it almost took his life. If it wasn't for his many years of painstakingly practicing body arts and training an indestructible body, the consequence of being hit head-on by that kick would have been his corpse separated from his head. The escape from Impel Down had left an indelible impression in Beckman's heart. His heart was full of mixed feelings. It was the first time he realized that he was so fragile. The enemy was in front of him, but he could only flee like a mouse. The blow it brought was indescribable. It seems that Captain has already started. His wings are full, I can only break them one by one. Quickly adjusting his mentality, Beckman's eyes lit up, dragging his exhausted body. His observation hockey expanded and he slowly walked towards the center of the fight. Only by annihilating all these dogs first can he hit the power to deal with Dustless. Although it is only a passive strategy, it is the most effective strategy so far. About half an hour later, Beckman found the traces of Akagami, Red Hair, and others, as well as Hawkeye, who was forced by the crew of Akagami, Red Hair, pirates. The bloody traces all over his body were clearly visible. "Who can hurt you like this?" Seeing Beckman appear, Akagami, Red Hair, Shanks asked in surprise, and his heart was shocked. The fire that was enough to swallow the endless sky flashed away. Akagami, Red Hair, Shanks values friendship and loyalty, and his character of valuing his companions is known to the world. The trusted vice captain was severely injured, and it immediately aroused the boiling killing intent in his heart. "It doesn't matter, that man is not something we can deal with now." Beckman smiled bitterly, and his deep eyes were not as wise as before, and they were very dim. Akagami, Red Hair, Shanks looked stiff, and he naturally understood the man in Beckman's air. He unwillingly clenched his huge fist and finally could only sigh helplessly. The current gap between him and Dustless really made him helpless. "I'm fine, I'm just slightly injured. It's still because my strength is not enough." With a self-deprecating look on his face, Beckman said weakly. "The whole person is like a willow fluttering in the wind, drifting with the waves." A group of Akagami, Red Hair, pirates saw this scene with mixed feelings and looked guilty. The vice captain almost died and fell and impelled down. They could only watch and couldn't play any role. It was not difficult to guess what they were thinking. Now the goal is him. With all his strength, Beckman changed the topic and brought the problem to Hawkeye's head. When he was about to kill Hawkeye with Akagami, Red Hair, Shanks, his eyes were strangely empty. The black eyes were shining with an evil luster, the corners of his mouth were high, revealing a ferocious evil smile, and his momentum was very strange. Suddenly he turned his head and locked his eyes on the members of Akagami, Red Hair, pirates. His eyes also changed dramatically. Chapter 556. Akagami, Red Hair, stared at Beckman with a frown and suddenly realized that something was wrong. He instinctively perceived the danger, but out of their feelings for each other for many years, he didn't think that Beckman would harm him or his companions. "Beckman, you, Akagami, Red Hair," was full of doubts as he looked at Beckman, who was full of evil temperament. His eyebrows were deeply squeezed together, and an obvious chuan appeared between his eyebrows. The sudden strange dark temperament always felt like déjà vu. At some time in the past, he seemed to have experienced this kind of different aura from someone familiar. "Is it, my hawk, who was beaten by a group of people," showed a glimmer of hope in his desperate eyes, and a pair of strange scarlet eyes appeared in his mind. His slightly sluggish spirit was swept away and he was full of energy in an instant. The crew of the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates stared at Beckman. The usually gentle and approachable vice captain was like a monster in human skin at this moment, and he had become a monster inside. Under everyone's shocked gazes, a monstrous black flame was brewing in Beckman's eyes. His dry and cracked lips parted slightly, and a pitch-black willow, the wisp that could annihilate everything in the world, burst out. Amaterasu. The fire of the netherworld swallowed the surroundings in an instant, and the undying fire was surging, strange and unpredictable beyond imagination, and even burned on a small pool, unable to be extinguished. All of the crew members were stunned. They had not expected this sudden situation. They turned their heads and suddenly felt a burning pain on their skin. Their bodies were also occupied by this black fire. Some people didn't even have time to scream, and they were directly swallowed by the Amaterasu, without leaving any bones, and even the dregs disappeared out of thin air, leaving only dark flames on the ground. "Damn it, it hurts. What kind of fire is this, and it can't be extinguished? Bastard, why are you doing this to your own people?" The crew members who were tragically swallowed by the black flames roared in panic, and their tone was full of hatred. The vice captain, who they usually trusted most, suddenly attacked them, and they were shocked and angry. The reason why they weren't swallowed was that some of them had already learned the entry skills of armament hockey, and they could turn their bodies into an indestructible steel defense. However, even so, it was still unspeakably painful and torturous. Being able to die was a blessing from the heavens. The pain of being roasted by the Amaterasu made them wish they were dead. In the blink of an eye, there were only a few crew members left in the entire Akagami, Red Heir, pirates. Only a small number of elites remained. Most of these people were outstanding existences with observation hockey or armament hockey. Beckman, give me an explanation. Looking around at the scattered crew members, the red-haired Shanks's eyes were about to split open. Boundless murderous intent erupted from him as he roared at Beckman. At the moment when the black fire burned, Akagami, Red Heir, was also swallowed. His armament hockey was superb and he used hockey defense in an instant to survive. His body was only slightly burned, but the mental blow was unparalleled. You're not Beckman. Who the hell are you? Narrowing his eyes, red-haired Shanks realized that something was wrong. He locked his gaze on Beckman and clenched his fists. The black flame was clearly some kind of mysterious ability. Beckman was not an ability user, or there was no ability user in the Akagami, Red Heir, pirates. Once a person is angry, his reason and actions will be full of flaws and various fatal loopholes will appear all over his body. This is the case with Akagami, Red Heir, in front of him. His hockey raged uncontrollably and his momentum was monstrous. He was like a lion with messy red hair and a black cloak dancing without wind. At this moment, a black afterimage galloped over. The eagle's eyes jumped with a threatening chill. Like a storm, it raged in front of Akagami, Red Heir. The cold light jumped up and printed on the chest of Akagami, Red Heir, forever. Hey! Poochie! With the roar of steel, the galloping cold light broke through the defense of Akagami, Red Heir. His chest suddenly split open and the long and narrow knife wound was clearly visible. The angry red-haired Shanks's face was as pale as paper, and his body swayed and almost fell to the ground. The initiator of this is Iris, without any emotion, only thousands of indifferent eagle eyes, staring blankly at Akagami, Red Heir, and immediately kicked him away. This is just politeness, Shanks. Staring at Akagami, Red Heir, who flew out, Hawkeye said coldly. Looking around, his body was also full of large and small wounds. His condition was not much better than Akagami, Red Heir. The blood stains have dyed Hawkeye's clothes scarlet. Good job, Hawkeye. Nodding with satisfaction, Beckman smiled and said in a frivolous tone. Akagami, Red Heir, Shanks gritted his teeth and stood up. The crew of the Akagami, Red Heir, pirates who survived flocked over and looked at his injuries with worry. It turned out to be you. I always felt that Beckman's evil temperament was familiar, and now there is always contempt and indifference in his tone. It turned out to be you. Staring at Beckman, the figure of Dustless appeared in his mind. Carefully comparing, it was almost 10 times similar. This is the unique technique of the Sharingan, called the transcription seal, but because this guy doesn't have the Sharingan, it is not perfect. It can only store a small amount of chakra, and the power is only a few layers. Otherwise, maybe all the Akagami, Red Heir, pirates would have been killed. Beckman said in a rather regretful tone. The meaning of his words was obviously that the Akagami, Red Heir, pirates were lucky. The transcription seal technique can only be stored in the Sharingan to ensure a perfect fit. With Dustless's current strength, he can force it to remain in the eyes of others without being noticed by the other party. It is also very difficult to do, and only a small amount of chakra can be stored. The power displayed is also not satisfactory, but according to the current situation, it is not important. Chapter 557. The red-haired Shanks glared angrily. Numerous ferocious blue veins appeared on his forehead, almost covering his entire face. He panted heavily and stared at Beckman with his scarlet eyes. He forcibly suppressed his raging hatred, and his right arm trembled as he held the western sword. If you want to kill me, then come at me. Now there is not much chakra left in him. It is extremely difficult to maintain this state, let alone attack. With a mocking smile on his face, Beckman patted his chest and signaled Red Hair to slash here. Red Hair Shanks was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. Seeing this scene, Red Hair's killing intent increased and his face became more and more ugly. He was not an idiot. Now Dustless was only occupying Beckman's body. If he attacked rashly, the one who would be hurt would be Beckman and not Dustless. After thinking about it, Red Hair was not anxious in such an embarrassing situation. Instead, he was unusually calm. His breathing gradually calmed down and the chill swept away. He regained his calmness. He still had the upper hand in the current situation. At least the remaining crew members could escape unscathed. Often when the situation was more critical, the unshakable mentality could ensure that they could get through the difficulties safely. Turning danger into safety, they needed to face it calmly. This kid was able to come this far and successfully stabilize the position of Yonko at such a young age. In addition to his strength, his mature mind also played a decisive role. Beckman, who was guided by Dustless's consciousness, nodded slightly and secretly sighed that Yonko was not easy to deal with. Your enemy is right in front of you. Are you going to watch him go free? With a sneer, Dustless continued to provoke. His tone was light as if life was nothing, and his eyes were filled with disdain as if the crew members who were burned into nothingness by Amaterasu were trash. Even though Red Hair Shanks's expression didn't change, his breathing became heavy again. Dustless's words were like a sharp thorn that fiercely stabbed into his heart. Red Hair's body trembled slightly and an indescribable grievance arose spontaneously. The enemy was so close, but he was helpless. The feeling in his heart was self-evident. What exactly is your goal? If you were to act personally, it would be much faster. Why do you have to go through so much trouble? Doing this won't do you any good. Red-haired Shanks asked with a dark face. At this moment, he was no different from a volcano on the verge of erupting. His entire body was filled with a destructive and violent heat that could not be approached. What's his purpose? Don't get carried away. Do you think you have something I need? Hearing that, Dustless used an extremely lazy tone to speak. Akagami, Red Hair, pirates have no money and no power. It can be said that they are poor. Among the Yonko, for emperors, only Akagami, Red Hair, Shanks's power is the most fragile, but the crew is the elite of the elite, all of them are veteran strong. Of course, Red Hair Shanks wasn't interested in material benefits. As for the reason for not letting go of your pirates. If you have to find a reason. Scratching his head helplessly, Dustless seemed to be very entangled and said in a low voice, looking at your ugly appearance after killing each other, this is the picture I am looking forward to. The casual words made everyone, including Akagami, Red Hair, angry and they immediately planned to fight. Thinking that the physical attack would be borne by Beckman, their hearts were extremely uncomfortable. It was more uncomfortable than eating 10 pounds of flies. Especially the smile in his eyes made them want to vomit blood, silently telling them that I am here and I promise not to run. Come and hit me if you have the guts. There was a flash of light in his mind, and Akagami, Red Hair, Shanks understood Dustless's intentions in the blink of an eye. You despicable bastard, I will definitely kill you with my own hands in the future to comfort those souls who cannot rest in peace in the underworld. The red-haired Shanks clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked as he spoke in a threatening tone. Dustless's move was very vicious. Not only did he let Beckman bear the notoriety of killing each other, but he also cut off the retreat of the Akagami, Red Hair, pirates. Who would join a pirate group that kills each other? Even though the red-haired Shanks did not care about these things, and he could laugh off the ridicule from the outside world, he could not bear to see his best friend carry such a heavy bad reputation, and live with his spine being poked at for the rest of his life. He thought that Sengoku was despicable enough and liked to play tricks. Now compared with Dustless, Sengoku is much cuter. The new fleet admiral of the Marines still pays attention to the bottom line, and Dustless can use any despicable means without mercy to achieve his goals. Don't put on such a scary expression, I think you should thank me. You are a group of pirates, nothing more than to stand out. Tomorrow the name Beckman will spread all over the world. Controlling the body of Beckman, Dustless laughed. Staring at the red-haired Shanks who wanted to tear himself into pieces, grind his bones and scatter his ashes, but he could only hold it back. He was almost angry to the point of internal injury. At the same time, he gave Hawkeye a look. There is no need to fight with the Akagami, red-hair, pirates. Chakra has been exhausted, and being outnumbered is only one reason. The second reason is that the Akagami, red-hair, pirates have been hit hard, and the new world is bound to become the prey of others. If they want to continue their journey, they can only withdraw from the new world and avoid the sharp edge. Hawkeye nodded slightly, and the black sword in his hand returned to his back. He took a deep look at Akagami, red-hair, Shanks, then turned and flashed into the dense jungle and disappeared. The so-called Shichibukai and Yonko, for emperors, are not at the same level. Hawkeye, who retreated quickly, sighed and looked at the wounds all over his body. His eyes couldn't help but dim. If Dustless hadn't arrived in time and attacked him with incredible means, he would have been besieged to death. At this moment, the Akagami, red-hair, pirates are celebrating the killing of the world's best swordsman on the sea. Don't chase, it's not necessary. Looking at the disappearing figures in the jungle, Akagami, red-hair, Shanks waved his hand and stopped the crew from chasing. The plan has evolved to such a step and has completely failed. The flawless plan failed because of the influence of Dustless, and the culprit was his deputy captain. Chapter 558. Red-hair Shanks frowned tightly. He didn't know what Dustless was thinking, but there was suddenly an inexplicable voice in his heart telling him to run away immediately. It was indeed a bit abrupt, but it was unusually true. However, red-hair Shanks still chose to act rationally and completely ignored his inner instincts. There was no other reason than that after he slipped away, his vice-captain would definitely become a turtle in a jar. It was impossible for him to give up on Beckman, and the principle of valuing his companions would never change. Don't worry, it's not just your Akagami, red-hair, pirates, but the other pirates around the island will also be buried with him. Seeing the sweat on red-hair Shanks' temples becoming more and more obvious, Dustless softly, kindly, advised him. Hearing this, the optimistic red-hair Shanks just showed a smile on his face. Although it looked extremely far-fetched, it also highlighted his cheerful mentality, showing that he was not afraid of death. Is that so? I didn't expect you, who regarded life as grass, to be so kind. Holding the western sword in his hand, red-hair Shanks said bluntly. In such an urgent state of mind, he was still calm and had already put life and death out of his mind. I hope you can be so calm when you go to heaven. Beckman said indifferently with murderous intent in his eyes. This cold tone was indeed like what the red-haired Shanks had said before. It was full of contempt for all living things, and its words revealed a sense of superiority. Unlike the red-haired Shanks, Wu-chan thought that it should be so. The weak were naturally dominated by the strong. The law of the jungle was the law of the jungle. Every world was nothing more than this. Without strength, you would be trampled by the enemy. If you wanted to live safely, you could only become the top predator in the food chain. It was precisely because of this idea of being vigilant in times of peace that Wu-chan could take this step today. Closing his eyes, Beckman was too lazy to talk nonsense with red-hair Shanks. This kind of pirate mentality has been deeply ingrained, and it is nonsense to say more. Rotten wood can't be carved. Is it coming? Seeing Beckman coldly close his eyes, red-haired Shanks felt his hair stand on end. He looked at Dustless warily. As long as Dustless's remaining power in Beckman's body disappeared with the wind, he would seize the opportunity to take back Beckman. Victory or defeat was no longer important to him. Dustless squinted his eyes and peered at the red-haired man. His hoarse voice was filled with a hint of playfulness. Clearly, Dustless was looking forward to the scene when the red-haired Shanks saw the calamitous seismic star. After a while, the tightly shut eyes suddenly opened. The remaining Beckman and the chakra in his body were located. His eyes opened and emitted a dim light. Mariewa Dustless and Dustless's Dustless controlled Beckman spoke at the same time. Their cold voices lingered in the world for a long time without dissipating. Tingai quaking star. The quaint and vicissitudes of life filled the entire island. It contained magic, causing a flaw in the unstoppable time. In an instant, everything came to an end. The remaining chakra in Beckman's body was also exhausted in an instant. He fell to the ground in exhaustion. Is this guy trying to play to the gallery? The moment Beckman fell to the ground, red-haired Shanks turned into an afterimage and rushed over. He then looked around at the unchanged environment and frowned. Cough, cough, cough. At this moment, the silent Beckman suddenly woke up. It seemed that his consciousness was still in a daze and he couldn't speak sensitively. He just tried to raise his finger and point to the sky. Seeing this, red-haired Shanks was stunned and subconsciously looked at the sky. At the same time, the cloudless void suddenly darkened. Only the sky and the sea more than 10 kilometers away were still in a clear state. In the dark sky, for some reason, it was extremely difficult to breathe. Gulp. Are you kidding me? How can this happen? This is beyond the limits of the devil fruit. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that this is the power of God. Fearing that his old eyes were blurry, red-haired Shanks rubbed his eyes and unconsciously snorted. His pupils suddenly shrank, and he looked as if he had seen a ghost. Following red-haired Shanks' line of sight, an unprecedentedly large meteorite slowly fell from the sky. The entire sky of the sea was gloomy and filled with despair. It was all brought about by this sudden meteorite. Red-haired Shanks' expression was extremely ugly. At least ghosts could be defeated, but this meteorite that was more than 10 kilometers in size was definitely an existence that could not be defeated. Hee hee. Is this the technique that guy was talking about? A technique that can't be escaped no matter how hard you try. I thought that he had casually made it up. Now it seems that it really is a well-deserved reputation. After being stunned for a moment, it was followed by a wave of helpless bitter self-ridicule. At first, he still held on to a fluke in his heart and thought that Wu Chen was speaking empty words. Now, this cruel fact caused him to be speechless. The pirates around the island were also full of despair. Their eyes were numb and dull as they stared at the slowly falling meteorite and the attack range that covered the island. The pirates who wanted to escape just sat down and recalled the wonderful scenes of the past. Because after this, they would never have the chance to taste those beautiful memories again. Only those pirates who were full of a strong desire to survive fled desperately, but in any case, they still couldn't avoid the lock of the Tingai. Damn it. Maybe it's just like what Hawkeye said before. That man was deliberately created by God to mock our ignorance and weakness. Red-haired Shanks said in a gloomy and hoarse voice, but his footsteps didn't stop as he carried Beckman and ran towards the sea. An optimistic mentality has been developed, and Shanks was born to be the kind of person who won't give up easily. What's more, the island was surrounded by the sea, and neither of them were ability users. Their physique was strong, so the probability of escape was not impossible. Chapter 559. Beckman's face was full of surprise, and his mind was shaken. The image reflected in his eyeball was replaced by the slowly falling meteorite, and he was extremely speechless. The meteorites that appeared out of nowhere were like small mud balls that one could pinch with one's hand. There were as many as one wanted, and there was no end to them. The endless meteorites filled the sky, and the surrounding sea was dark. The pirates who were fleeing in all directions were stunned as they looked up at the meteorites in the sky. They thought that they were going to heaven, but they once again fell into hell, and the hope in their hearts instantly disappeared. There was no need to deliberately lock onto the target. It was just an indiscriminate attack, and it was useless to retreat to the end of the world. The island that couldn't withstand the attack of the second meteorite would inevitably explode, and the resulting waves would be enough to swallow everything in the world. Let's kill that meteorite together. Some pirates who were unwilling to leave the world used all kinds of abilities to bombard the meteorite falling from the sky. All kinds of ability users used all their strength to try to slow down the meteorite's falling speed, but the effect was minimal. The surface of the meteorite only splashed dust, and the dust that peeled off was negligible. It couldn't shake him at all. The second meteorite continued to fall slowly, covering the sky. The area covered by the black shadow was silent, and it was dead silent. All in all, no matter how they escaped, it was useless. The falling meteorite oppressed everyone's nerves, and even some pirates who couldn't withstand the pressure fell to the ground, foaming at the mouth and fainting, slowly waiting for death. This was 10 times more uncomfortable than directly killing them with a sword. Red Hair Shanks, F***K your ancestors, aren't they known as the Yonko that ruled the world? Come out and show your peerless side. Bullshit, Yonko, they are all just fence-sitters. Idiot, stop dreaming. That Red Hair Shanks is just a villain who ran away when he saw the situation wasn't good. Do you really think that he will jump out like a savior to save the world? This is just a fairy tale, there's no rush in dreaming when you die. In the face of such a desperate situation, the pirates who couldn't bear it finally exposed their ugly nature and began to complain about the initiator, Red Hair Shanks. They didn't care about the situation and began to express their condolences to Red Hair Shanks and his family. For a moment, he made a fool of himself. Since he was going to die anyway, he might as well express his condolences to his family before he died. That way, he could barely take advantage of them verbally. The rude pirates naturally had no scruples when they scolded people, and their merciless abuse was hard to listen to. These bastards. Red-haired Shanks twitched his mouth, and his face turned green. He was so depressed that he wanted to vomit blood. With a high-level observation hockey, he inevitably heard the complaints of this group of fleas. He and Hawkeye didn't inform these grasshead kings. They all came from all over the world with the mentality of watching a play. They were the ones who were implicated and complained about him. They deserved to be smashed to death. Shanks, there's no need to worry. They're just trying to shift the fear in their hearts, Beckman comforted him. Red-haired Shanks had been implicated even when he was lying down. The mastermind behind the scenes is also dustless, and it has nothing to do with them. Unfortunately, seeing is believing, and they have nothing to say to refute it. The world will think that red-haired Shanks has done something outrageous, and then attract the revenge of God's meteorite. It's logical. His cold eyes spread out, taking in the dying island and the falling meteorite into his eyes. Red-haired Shanks, who turned his grief into motivation, dived into the bottom of the sea and fled frantically with all his strength. Dustless, who is far away in Mariewa, can't observe the scene of the destruction of the world, but the consequences of the various irresistible factors caused by the impact of 2 meteorites on the sea can be imagined. Fortunately, the island where red-haired Shanks and Hawkeye dueled is a deserted island, and most of the islands scattered around are dead islands with no people. It doesn't matter if they are swallowed and dismembered. No one will care. Every year, countless islands sink in the New World because of various factors. Beckman, that thick-skinned guy, didn't even apologize with his death. He killed his companions with his own hands, and he's still alive? Wu Chen lamented, thumping his chest and stamping his feet. He felt that it wasn't worth it to lose those crew members. Princess Odoheim was speechless. Obviously, you used other people's hands to kill other people's crew, but you shamelessly put a black hat on someone else's head. She also suddenly realized that Dustless is not as terrifying as she imagined. At least he occasionally jokes, and there is indeed an essential difference between him and other Tenryubito. Jinbe has joined the 7 warlords of the sea, and the original condition was to pardon all the fishmen except Tiger. You want me to let Tiger go? Glancing at Princess Odoheim, Dustless immediately understood her intentions. Princess E.G. gently nodded when she heard this. She looked at Wu Chen from the corner of her eyes. Seeing that his expression was as calm as water, her tense heart also relaxed. She sighed secretly that there was a chance. However, the next sentence caused Princess Aji's beautiful face to collapse. To me, this is indeed a small matter that is as easy as pie. But I think you also understand that he boldly broke into Mariehua, so it's not reasonable to let him go so easily. Looking at Princess Otoheim, Dustless said with a smile, and the meaning revealed in his tone was quite simple. He can let them go, but he needs chips. Princess Otoheim is not an ordinary person. She used to be the princess of the Fishman Island, and she has seen pirates like Dustless. Her shrewdness is also quite good. She immediately understood Dustless's intentions and asked bluntly, "What are your conditions?" Dustless smiled when he heard the words, and then put his mouth next to Princess Otoheim. Her jade fingers tightly grasped the corner of her clothes, and Princess Otoheim's face was slightly red. She thought that Dustless would put forward dirty conditions, but the content of his words made her face strange. It's that simple? Looking at Dustless with a puzzled face, Princess Otoheim was suspicious of this. Dustless glanced at Princess Otoheim faintly, then nodded silently, and the serious expression on his cheeks also dispelled Princess Otoheim's doubts. Chapter 560. Sakazuki was so tactful that he silently explained everything. Only Sengoku could make such a stubborn person like him change his mind. Only then would he not dare to act rashly. It's just a trivial matter. Even if he knows, Sengoku can't change the reality. Even if he is dissatisfied, he can only endure it. For the sake of Caesar and my invincibility, he won't do this kind of losing business. He raised his head and looked at the exquisitely decorated ceiling. It was dust-free and light. In the world where the strong are respected, the right to speak is in the hands of the strongest. Dustless, whose fist is bigger than Sengoku, stood in the most favorable position from the beginning to overlook the development of the situation, and then he influenced the development of the situation in his own favor. Dustless's identity and strength are above Sengoku. He has absolute power and unparalleled strength. After the combination of the two, any strategy is self-humiliating and the effect is negligible. This is the case every time. The real hunter who gains is Dustless. It really makes Sengoku's stomach ache and tired of dealing with it. He has been in the position of Fleet Admiral for some time, but he has no achievements to speak of. It is inevitable that people will gossip about him. Not only that, the establishment of Shichibukai is a manifestation of his incompetence. If the Marine has real ability, there is no need to establish this deformed organization composed entirely of pirates to suppress pirates. Eat inside and betray outside. Princess Otoheim snorted. As a Tenryubito of the world government, he secretly fought against the world conquest and the Marine. What is this if not eating inside and betraying outside? Hearing this, Dustless's face did not change. He never felt that he was teammates with the government or the Marine in the trenches. He is afraid that the Marine is the same. The two are completely different from each other. It is naturally impossible to eat inside and betray outside. At the end of the day, Dustless was just a master of both the underworld and underworld. Whether it is the Marine or the government, in the eyes of Dustless, they are the same kind of people. No one is right and no one is wrong. The only one who can really judge whether they are righteous or evil is the final winner. Since you took the initiative to make a move, then I can only return the favor. Test me? I can only passively fight back. The hostility in his eyes disappeared in a flash. Dustless smiled. It would be impolite not to return the favor. On the blue sea surface, the salty sea breeze blew, and the reflection of dozens of naval warships could be seen on the surface of the water. The unique flag and the unique silhouette of the warships could only be seen in the navy. Sakasugi's entire body was wrapped up so tightly that only his bronze cheeks could be seen. His old face, however, looked extremely ugly. The hostility in his old eyes was clearly visible. Bastard! The massive fist easily punched through the deck, leaving a scorching red fist print. Sakasugi was like a human-shaped weapon that only knew how to kill. Its entire body was suffused with an oppressive aura, causing the entire ship to heat up for no reason, the temperature instantly rising dozens of times. The magma fruit was extraordinarily powerful, and it wasn't hard to see that Sakasuji had reached the pinnacle of perfection in its application and development. Akainu's eyes gloomily looked at the handcuffed man in the distance with pale skin. Akainu was extremely aggrieved, and his body uncontrollably erupted hot magma, burning through and melting the deck. "Let me go. Do you know who's protecting me now? Come and untie this grandpa." Arrogant, condescending screams suddenly sounded. Looking in the direction of the voice, it was Kaiser who was locked up by Seastone. In fact, when Dustless called, Kaiser was already captured by Sakasuji and was on the way to the headquarters. Kaiser clearly heard the conversation between Sakasuji and Dustless in the Den Mushi. "Release him from Seastone's handcuffs." His old face twitched. Even if he was unwilling, Sakasuji was powerless to change the reality. He wasn't an idiot. On the surface he may look like a brute who only knows how to use force, but in fact, he's a meticulous person. Dustless's words in the Den Mushi already hinted that Kaiser was his subordinate. It can also be speculated that unscrupulously attacking Kaiser's opponent will immediately be met with the fiercest retaliation from Dustless. The soldiers on the warship looked at each other and stepped forward to release Kaiser's handcuffs. Sakasuji's will is above everything, and going against him is a dead end. "Pack up your things and get out of here before I go back on my word." Waving his hand, Sakasuji issued the expulsion order. He suddenly felt that he was the most aggrieved vice admiral in history. There was nothing more ironic than releasing the enemy he captured with his own hands intact. After communicating with Dustless, he contacted Fleet Admiral Sengoku. Releasing Kaiser was Sengoku's order, and Sakasuji couldn't do anything. In the end, the Marine Headquarters is a department of the world government, and the world government serves the celestial dragons, and Dustless's identity is unusual, and falling out with him would be a great loss to the Marine. After careful consideration, Sengoku chose to compromise. Caesar was just an unknown clown. It was not worth losing Dustless, a trump card that could change the world situation, for him. Sakasuji is now just a vice admiral, and it seems like he has unlimited potential. He has a high chance of becoming an admiral in the future, but that's a matter of the future. He is strong, but there are many people stronger than him in this world. Even if he becomes an admiral in the future, it's not a big deal. At most, he will have more power to speak. "Kiki. This debt, I will pay you back double in the future. Remember this, Sakasuji." After throwing down the threat, Kaiser glared at Sakasuji. Seeing that the situation is not good, Kaiser hurriedly ran to the boat the Marine prepared for him and sped towards the island where he was captured. Before he left, he didn't forget to turn around and make a face at Sakasuji. That look was obviously saying, "Come hit me if you have the guts. Useless trash, the next time I attack you, even if that man protects you, you won't be able to escape death." Sakasuji growled with cold eyes. Chapter 561. The crystal-clear ice sculpture turned into a 10-meter tall ice wall, but as soon as it got close to Marmarin, Kuzan easily froze it with his Frost Ice Fruit's ability, turning it into a towering ice wall that blocked out the sunlight. The entire Marmarin was covered in a cold, dark shadow, and the sun was nowhere to be seen. Perhaps as long as Kazan's, Akiji, was late, Marin would be swallowed up and annihilated by this huge wave, and the people who could survive on the island would be few, and all the ability users would definitely fall. Oh. This is really terrible. They are going to destroy our marine. Is it possible that Whitebeard has personally come to our door? Borsellino, Kizaru, who was wearing a yellow striped suit, widened his eyes and tried his best to hide his calmness. But even so, from his slightly twitching lips, it was clear that Borsellino's heart was abnormally throbbing. When encountering seawater, the one who had the least ability to fight back was the Devil Fruit ability user. Yasukani no Magatama. His tall body turned into a beam of light that shot into the sky. Looking down at this huge ice wall, Borsellino's eyes shone with a cold light. A dazzling light condensed between his hands, covering an area so large that it made one's scalp go numb. Whoosh! After brewing for a while, the flashes that filled the sky finally came down in an instant. The destructive light waves played out a gorgeous scene. The iceberg that was as hard as steel collapsed in an instant. Countless holes appeared, densely packed and disorderly like a beehive. The warm sun shone through these holes. Boom! The towering iceberg gradually collapsed and was annihilated, until finally it turned into ice debris and shattered, and the warm sun once again enveloped the entire Marlindo. The Marines on the entire island took a deep breath of relief. At that moment, they thought that they had stepped into the legendary paradise. The younger generation will replace the older generation. These young people will have a bright future. In the Fleet Admiral's office, Fleet Admiral Sengoku nodded with relief. The current situation of the Marine is quite embarrassing. The Admirals, the Marine headquarters' most powerful force in the world, are now in a state of discontinuity. The original Admiral Z has retired, Garp refused to be promoted to an Admiral again and again, and the former Admiral Sengoku has been promoted to Fleet Admiral. Now they can only rely on the evil organization, Shichibukai, and promise them the legitimacy of their existence while using them to suppress other pirates around the world. By the way, the tsunami just now seems to have nothing to do with Whitebeard. Boom! Garp's slightly doubtful voice hasn't fallen, and the entire Marlindo trembled again. The intensity of the tremors was more frequent than before, and the tremors were more clear. Even Sengoku and Garp's bodies were shaking rhythmically with this frequency. Ka. Marlindo's ground also had narrow cracks, which was affected by the source of the tremors. It continued to expand and extend, and it showed signs of swallowing the entire island. Boom 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 boom, raising his head, he saw a wave that was even larger than the one before. It was so terrifying that it almost covered the entire sky. The entire world was filled with despair, and there was no sign of life at all. At the very least, in the eyes of Marlin's Marines, what was reflected was pure despair. Is it him? Sengoku's heart was in his throat, and it was extremely difficult for him to breathe. His eyes were gray, and he was 100% sure that if the Marine headquarters was hit, it would definitely be uprooted. Garp's face was also blue, and his iron fist was clenched tightly. He looked at Sengoku, and the two did not hesitate to break out of the window and attack the fierce waves. Rankyaku. His powerful right leg swept forward, and a huge silver ray of light whizzed out. The swift and awe-inspiring ray of light instantly split apart the monstrous waves. The power of the cold ray of light was beyond imagination. It contained some kind of mysterious power, and even the sea didn't dare to easily heal it. Boom! Fleet Admiral Sengoku's golden light shone brightly and turned into a terrible golden Buddha. He condensed a key shield in his palm, and a powerful impact flew out. The boundless waves were torn apart by the two of them, but it was not enough to completely destroy it. They could only keep the Marine headquarters safe and sound. The fierce waves were suppressed by the joint efforts of the two. The tsunami passed by, and the cracks that were torn open were just enough to accommodate Marlin and Maitreya. It's not Whitebeard. Looking at the monstrous waves passing behind him, Garp was cold, and at the same time, he could assert that it was not Whitebeard. A figure had appeared in his eyes. Indeed. Sengoku nodded with an ugly face. Whitebeard had no reason to attack the Marine headquarters. Thinking of the people he had recently offended, only Dustless could do the same. He's deliberately demonstrating, Garp. With a bitter face, Sengoku became a lot older in an instant. The roaring waves directly swallowed the island behind them and completely erased it from the world forever. Sengoku's eyes were filled with regret. His forehead and temples oozed a little cold sweat. Fortunately, Sakazuki did not act rashly. This is not a demonstration, but a warning. If there is a next time, the Marine headquarters will end up in the same way as those sunken islands. Garp said gloomily, his face was gloomy, and the clenched fist in his hand was relaxed. The reason why it was so easy to break the wave attack, there is no doubt that Dustless deliberately let him go. Otherwise, according to his strength, he could use some more shocking abilities to destroy and crush Marlindo. This is just a disguised warning, and it's also a naked slap to Sengoku's old face. It quietly told Fleet Admiral Sengoku a simple and clear meaning: if there is a next time, Marlindo will be erased. Chapter 562. His eyes narrowed, and the light from his eyes was extremely sharp. The feeling of déjà vu is not a lie. His eyes finally fell on the young man in the black coat, and glanced at the pigeon on his shoulder. Dustless's eyes flashed. It turns out to be them. No wonder I felt they were familiar. Wu Chen's face revealed an untraceable arc. He already knew the origin and identity of these people. The secret spy agency of the world government, CP9. However, this group of people was much younger than they were in the future. Dustless didn't recognize them at first glance. Seeing Lucci's strange dress and the pigeon on his shoulder, he suddenly recognized them. Frowning slightly, Dustless didn't remember interacting with these people. While Dustless was looking at the CP9, these young CP9 members also quietly peeked at Dustless, and then looked at the celestial dragons foaming at the mouth, and their faces were moved. They had long heard that Dustless was a different kind of celestial dragons, and today they saw it with their own eyes. Louis South, Saint, let us deal with these celestial dragons. As the leader of the team, Lucci bowed slightly, and then said in a respectful tone. Dustless was silent when he heard the words, and his deep eyes turned around several people, as if he was planning something, and his eyes flashed with a strange luster. Seeing Dustless was silent, Lucci gave Kaku a look. The latter nodded slightly, and then walked toward the celestial dragons lying on the ground, and the disgust in his eyes disappeared. No matter who in the world, they don't have a good impression of celestial dragons, even if they are members of the government. When Kaku was about to drag this group of celestial dragons away, a black shadow suddenly attacked. The speed was as fast as lightning, and the naked eye could only see a fleeting afterimage. Kaku did not hesitate to block with his arms in front of him, and his whole body tensed, and his flesh turned into an invisible armor, extremely hard, resisting the incoming shadow. Bang! The powerful force was beyond imagination, and Kaku was instantly sent flying backward. He retreated a distance of 3 feet before he could stop. His face was pale, and his arms were trembling uncontrollably. Who the hell are you? Staring at Hancock, Kaku suppressed the anger in his heart and asked with an ugly face. The strength of this young woman dressed as a maid was unexpectedly strong. The young master didn't agree to your conditions. Naturally, you can't take this person away. A cold voice came from Hancock's mouth. Hancock said expressionlessly. These CP9 are obviously trying to fish in troubled waters. Dustless remained silent from beginning to end. He neither agreed nor denied. Hancock, who had been with Dustless all the time, knew that Dustless was actually rejecting them. If you dare to attack again, it won't be so simple. Staring at Kaku, Hancock's silky eyes were replaced by coldness, and the warning and contempt in her tone were obvious. The strength of these CP9 is not enough. Rob Lucci and others' faces were gloomy, and their brows were wrinkled, and their fists were uncontrollably clenched. They have already lowered their posture, but they didn't expect Dustless to be so inhumane. Not only did he not give them any face, but he also took the opportunity to slap them in the face. Looking at Dustless's slightly smiling eyes, all the members of the CP9 loosened their fists at the same time. Putting aside the gap between their identities, Dustless's bottomless strength made them unable to compete with him. All of them together, even the little maid named Hancock, may not be able to defeat him. And the felony of attacking a celestial dragon is enough for them to go to jail for a lifetime. You know what's good for you. Hancock glanced at the CP9 members, and then she stood back to Dustless. Dustless looked at them with interest, and he nodded secretly. These people are young, but their strength is really good. Perhaps they are not at the peak state like they will be in the future, but they are not far from it. You are the guests of the government, and this trivial matter will be handled by Hancock. His eyes swept over the CP9 members. Dustless smiled, and his eyes finally fell on Lucci, pointing to the fainted Tenryubito below. If you urgently need to recover them, just go out and wait. In the end, Wuchen recovered his usual calm expression. His expression was full of indifference, and his cold tone didn't leave any room for retreat. Then, he closed his eyes and completely ignored these people. The CP9 members suddenly stiffened, and their eyes were faintly burning. Recover? What do you think we are doing? We are the secret spies of the world government, not the waste recovery manager of the garbage station. The corners of their mouths twitched violently, and the CP9 members almost vomited blood. Dustless's eyes were like looking at a mouse, which made them speechless and tangled. Their lungs were burning with fire, but they couldn't vent it. The fire went straight to the brain along the meridians of the body, burning their reason. In the past, when they performed tasks, almost all of them went smoothly, and they crushed the other side with absolute strength, but this task was unexpected. In terms of strength, they can't even beat the other side's maid, and in terms of background, they are even worse. The essence of the existence of the world government is to work for the celestial dragon. Especially Wu Chen's teasing and mocking gaze, it made them feel a few hundred times worse than eating 5 kilograms of flies. They could only lower their heads and not dare to meet Wu Chen's gaze, fearing that they would be violently beaten up by the other party if they were impulsive. In that case, goodbye. The CP9 members once again bowed to Dustless, and then left with a pale face, waiting for Hancock to clean up the celestial dragon, and then they will recover. Even if they are unwilling, they can only do this. Chapter 563. The CP9 group quietly retreated, and the expression of wanting to attack but not daring to break out made Hancock laugh again and again. The world government spy agency directly under Dustless was like a clown in front of him, and they couldn't raise their heads at all. They had no dignity and could only escape. Seeing that the CP9 group completely disappeared, Hancock ran out to find bodyguards to drag the group of Tenryubito out. Although the bodyguards were full of fear, throwing Tenryubito into the garbage dump was not a small crime. Because of Dustless's terrifying power, they still chose to do it. At least the Tenryubito will find trouble in the future. Disobeying Dustless now may result in blood splashing on the spot. In the dark, Dustless's face gradually converged and turned into monotonous ridicule. His deep black eyes were full of wisdom, and he had already guessed why the CP9 suddenly visited. Master, there is something wrong with them. Hancock stood beside Dustless and wondered. She always felt that these people had other plans, but she couldn't tell the specifics. It was not reasonable for them to go back empty-handed. And their hands are too long. CP9 is only an official of the world government, and the object of their specific service seems to be only CP0. Hancock was puzzled. Dustless had told her these things before. Dustless just smiled mysteriously when he heard the words, and his knuckles rhythmically tapped on the table. He was slightly surprised and then nodded gently. He didn't expect Hancock to see the trick. Perhaps because Hancock can be an outsider, she can observe the overall development from an observer's point of view, and then get alternative indirect information. It's very simple, because they want to get valuable things from me, but the CP9 is too arrogant. Even their behind-the-scenes boss can't do it, let alone these small people. Shaking his head contemptuously, Dustless sneered. Huh? The smile on his face suddenly froze. Dustless raised his head and stared at the dark corridor. He suddenly felt a pair of eyes peeking at them from there. As far as the eye could see, there was nothing there. The gloomy space maintained a deathly stillness from beginning to end. There was no change at all. It was as quiet as stagnant water. Was it an illusion? Dustless wondered. His perception rarely made mistakes, and his accuracy had even reached the level of 100%. Damn stupid cow, do you think you can close the gap between us with the devil fruit? Naive and ignorant. Wu Chen sneered inwardly with a sneer on his face. He suddenly remembered a member of the CP9 named Blueno. He is a paramecia door fruit user. His ability is that any object he touches will turn into a door and can be opened. He can open the door through air and then achieve incredible space-jumping ability. In short, it could barely be considered a heaven-defying ability. You want to use the ability of the devil fruit to close the gap in strength and use it to spy on intelligence. It's a good idea, but you chose the wrong target. Dustless smiled and was about to kill Blueno on the spot. His eyes flashed, and the majestic chakra gathered in his body instantly disappeared. Such a good chess piece can be used in the opposite way. Dustless, Sama, what is their purpose? Seeing Dustless's strange silence, Hancock asked puzzledly. She can conclude that the purpose of the CP9 is not simple, and there is an unknown conspiracy. That's for sure. Hearing this, Dustless rubbed his throat and deliberately raised his voice, saying, the purpose of this group of people is very simple. It's estimated that they are here to spy on the design of Pluton. A few idiots want to take the design from me. Is that so? Hancock's nose wrinkled slightly, and her clear eyes looked at Dustless suspiciously. In the blink of an eye, Dustless gave her a kind of earth-shaking change, as if he was a different person. Of course, there is more than one design of Pluton in this world. The original Pluton was designed and built by Water 7, so they should have a backup design in their hands. Wu Chen explained with certainty. His resolute tone was convincing. The original founders of Pluto were the craftsmen of Water 7, so it was understandable that such a confidential design was left behind. But that's the case. Hancock's eyes flashed as if she just woke up from a dream. Since Water 7 was the base for the creation of Pluton, it's reasonable to leave behind the design of Pluton. Dustless chatted casually for a while, and the words fell into Blueno's hands word for word. What kind of joke is this? That's the design of Pluto. How could it be so easy to get the source of the information? I heard from the other 5 that Louis South's strength has already reached the peak of perfection. If it's so easy to get the information, what's the difference between him and those newbies? In the dark promenade, CP9 member Kaku was the first to question loudly. Perhaps there is indeed information about Pluton in Water 7, but it's ridiculous that it's so easy to spy on the source of the information. Although Blueno's fruit ability is really amazing, it can't dispel his doubts. A group of CP9 members were hesitant. Although Blueno used this ability to spy on a lot of confidential information, this time his opponent was Dustless, who was feared by the Gorasei, 5 elder stars. They always felt that it was too childish. Why is it impossible? That man sneered at us before and didn't look at us seriously. People make mistakes and horses stumble. It's normal for me to spy on him when he's full of success. Blueno's face turned red as he saw his teammates looking at him suspiciously. Let's report to the 5 elders. Lucci, who has been silent from the beginning, said conservatively. He always felt that this is a trap, even if he knows it's a trap, he must go in. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Love Stories YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.